Rube, I apologize. I was a little late getting into the office
Why were you
today.
late, Dave?
Yeah, Disney on Ice is in our building, and I should have planned out better than that. I forgot that there's an 11 o'clock show.
That's unlike you.
I know, and I'm sitting in the traffic, and I'm going, oh man, I'm gonna get grief about this.
No, I mean I was thinking if you were really late, I'd be able to like go across the hallway and watch some of the show. I hear it's a good one.
It
But
is,
some of the tailgaters are pretty wild. Those 8-year-olds know how to party.
it is. Look, it's a fun time every year for these people.
Yeah, I was actually walking through the concourse on my way in and saw the prices on some of the souvenirs.
Like the light up guys.
Yeah,
I get it though. If I'm a kid, I want one of
yeah.
those.
But then they use it for 3 hours and then they never touch it again.
Or the
And
battery dies.
you just spent $50 on it.
Yeah, we should start selling like bootleg ones.
Oh, I like that
Like
idea.
undercut the concession stand, sell our own light up things.
Have a little stand out
Yeah,
outside.
and just run away from the cops.
I think that'll go over well with our bosses
I think so.
selling bootleg Disney on Ice
Yeah.
merchandise.
Until we get that business up and running, this is the Eagle Eye podcast presented by Nissan. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. We do have a lot to talk about today. It was a weird post game podcast. We haven't talked to everyone since that post game podcast. The Eagles won, and it didn't quite feel like a win, especially in the locker room. So we want to get into some of just the feeling around the team, where they are, what we see from the coaches and players. We'll talk about the Cardinals a little bit. Jonathan Gannon rematch game coming up, or no, reunion game, I guess, not a rematch. We talked to Matt Patricia, who eventually became his replacement here in Philly. So some interesting things from Matty P in that press conference. But Rube, let's start
Do we
with.
have to call him Matty P? Can we just call him Matt Patricia? Please.
Okay.
Thank you. Let me ask you a question before we start, and this is unscripted. I apologize for that. But do you feel any different about the loss and where they are than you did Monday, 7:30?
A little bit.
Like seeing San Francisco lose.
No, that didn't do it for me. I'm trying to look at them just as a team. Well, I get your point. Like San Francisco lost, Dallas lost, so you have a chance here. Like you have a legitimate chance
Yeah.
to still get the 1 or 2 seed.
Yeah.
And I get all that. I went back and watched the game. Like offensively, they did some good things. So, I don't want to. It was a bad game, and they didn't finish in the red zone. They had some fluky turnovers that like you can't take away. I had people tell me like, "You take away those 2 turnovers." Well, yeah, but those are
Yeah.
the 2 worst plays of the game. You could do that for a lot of different games in the NFL. You take away the 2 worst plays, and yeah,
Every game's
it
different.
looks a lot different.
Like if you take away our two worst podcasts,
It'd be hard to choose.
no, that's a bad. Yeah, I'm not sure where I was going with that,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it's funny because like they did a lot of good things on both sides of the ball.
Hmm.
It's I like what they did defensively for the most part, and I like what they did offensively. They just as a team they just keep finding these ways to hurt themselves,
Yeah.
to shoot themselves in the foot, and I think they're really talented. And if they could stop doing that, they could beat anybody. But they just can't stop doing that.
Yeah.
That's what makes it so interesting.
And at a point in your season, you kind of are what you put out there.
You are what
and
you are.
we are. This was a game on December 25th, so to expect them to suddenly find this switch
Exactly.
to flip, it's unlikely.
Yeah, but it's not like they can't like throw the ball, or they can't stop the run, or they just keep making mistakes
At bad times, too.
at bad times, bad mistakes at bad times.
Yeah.
And really big ones.
To fumble away the opening kickoff of the second half when you have a 17-point lead
Yeah.
is pretty wild.
Yeah. When
And
there's-
fluky, but
and there was really no reason for him to take it out anyway. But that's another. I mean, if you take away that play, all right. Anyway,
yeah, no, it's a fair question. And that's kind of what made it, like, on offense, I thought they did some really good things. Now,
yeah.
they didn't handle, they weren't good in the red zone. I didn't think they handled the blitz particularly well. And those are things that have popped up throughout this year. So I think those are issues that are more than this game, and that's what worries you.
I thought play calling was a little more inventive, a little more. I don't know, just a little crisper. I thought there was some good stuff.
I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah. I think they won with talent when they won.
I like. Well, all right.
It's fine.
We'll disagree. I mean, we're moving on, but I thought there's some good signs
Okay.
on
Well, it's certainly
offense.
good signs offensively. They put up a ton of yards.
Yeah.
They moved the football, and
It's the
that's what.
most yards they've had against the Giants since 1953.
Okay.
Game at Connie Mack Stadium. No, don't do it.
All
Don't do
right.
it.
Uh, I wanted to. So I thought they did some good things offensively, and that's what made it even a little more confusing to hear. Not confusing, but notable that Devontae Smith was so
Yeah.
down after the game that AJ Brown didn't even want to speak to reporters. And by the way, he did not want to on Wednesday in the locker room. So one of these last 2 days, I do expect he'll talk and
He'll
explain
talk.
a little bit. But yeah, I thought they did some good things offensively.
Yeah.
Do you agree with me that kind of made it a little strange to hear Devontae so down after the game?
Yeah. It was curious. I think it was just he was looking at, hey, we should have blown this team out, and we didn't.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Part of me thinks he was speaking more for the entire team than just for the offense.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. They just can't put teams away. I think that's really a problem.
Yeah. And then we had the weird.
But I like that he said it. I really like what he said, especially like when he was asked a couple times about going over 1,000 yards. And he was like almost insulted by the question. He's like, "We didn't play well.
Yeah.
I don't care." Like, plus going over 1,000 yards, it's I mean, it's what 58 yards a game or something. I don't know.
It's still a nice accomplishment.
It is, but what is it? 58 yards a game.
Yeah.
59 if you round up. Do you round up when you're figuring out like somebody's on pace for how many catches? Like I don't think you can round up like because you don't get like that eight like if you're on pace for like 92.7 catches, normally you round up 92.7 to 93. But when you're talking about on pace for like you can't get an eighth of a catch.
I don't really do a lot of on pace for.
Okay, never mind then.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah,
All right.
on pace for doesn't do much for me generally. And like, when it's fun when AJ Brown's on that tear and you go, he's on pace for 3,000 yards or,
Yeah.
whatever it is. But
Well, we're on pace for a 2-hour podcast. So
yeah, I mean, if we're going to divvy up the blame on that one,
yeah.
yep, raise your hand. But we saw that interaction late in that game. Nick Sirianni really fired up. He doesn't want to talk about it after the game about what happened. But then the next day, it was actually a question for me, but I didn't ask him specifically about that instance. I asked him about balancing, the want to get better and correct these mistakes, but keeping the vibe loose around the team because that was a tense post-game locker room for a win.
Yeah.
Probably the strangest post-game locker room I've been a part of.
Really?
It was just weird. It was off. And I don't have anything any way to quantify
Right.
that, but it didn't feel right after a win that snapped a 3-game losing streak. And maybe some of that is it's Christmas Day. The guys want to just bail and go see their families. Like I understand all that, but it felt off. And then we saw, and I don't want to make too much of this either, but we saw the clip of Sirianni in the post game speech, and it's quiet,
Yeah.
And you and I talked about this. There were probably ways to get the team a little more involved in that, like
Yeah.
you throw a football to Keely Ringo and say congrats on that pick.
And we didn't see the whole thing, so
That's true.
we could have missed.
Yeah, and I don't want to make too much of that, but when you
Plus, it might have been hard for the Eagles social media team to like find, a part of that was suitable to tweet out,
sure,
X out, whatever they did.
yeah, but you put all of those things together, and you're like, well, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And so I asked him about that, and then he brought up in zone that he needs to be less tense in situations like that. And what he's talking about is the sideline spat with like 30 seconds left in the game, where he's getting into it with Hassan Reddick there and Jeremiah Washburn, who coaches the edge rushers, and then Devontae Smith comes in. It looks like he tries to like calm down the situation. He has to walk away, so it was like a weird sideline scene that's not all that uncommon, but
Yeah.
in that situation, Nick admitted that it was probably too much.
Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting to hear him say that.
And he offered it.
Yeah.
He was not asked about that
Yeah.
sideline scene.
Yeah. I don't know exactly what that means. I don't think it's a good thing.
What? That he admitted it or that it happened?
No, that he feels that way.
Okay.
But I mean, I guess it's like, how do you remedy that? Like, I mean, I mean, I'm really impressed by coaches who are like super calm, like, like when, in those critical moments with 2 minutes left, and the other team. I mean, I'm just like, you see these guys on the sideline just calling the plays and calm as could be. It's really impressive to me because it's hard to do. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't. I've never sensed that, and he's never come across that way to me. I mean, he's always seemed pretty. I mean, look, he wears his heart on his sleeve. He's freaks out a lot, but he never struck me as being too. Because I don't think you can coach if you're too tense. I don't think you can coach the way you need to. And it's like anything that if you're tense, you're just not going to do well at it. Whether you're, a piano player playing a concerto, Rachmaninoff concerto. If you're tense, you're not going to be able to play the notes right. Not that I know that, I'm assuming. I've never really taken on a Rachmaninoff piano concerto, but it was interesting to hear him say that. I think I like the fact that everyone was uncomfortable after that game. I like the fact that nobody quite knew how to act. Nobody really wanted to. Nobody was bragging about beating the Giants. I mean, they understand who they are and what their deficiencies are, and that's good. I don't know if that means they're going to fix them, but like if they were, I'd be more concerned if they were all jumping up and down and cheering after that game, in the locker room.
Yeah, you might be right. And I wrote about this a little bit. This team is not having as much fun as last year's team, but I also don't think that manufacturing fun is the way to do it either. Like that comes from being a better football team and dominating here and there. And like I'm sure that they'd have a lot of fun if they were winning the way they were supposed to. Nick came out and said like he's 1,000% sure they're having fun when they win. But like I think that it's something that has to kind of come naturally.
I think there's a ton of pressure. There's been a ton of pressure on this team all year. When you go to the Super Bowl and everyone's picking you to go back, and that's the expectation, and that's the internal expectation and the external expectation, and and then things just start coming, don't come easily, which happens with Super Bowl teams the next year. I mean, you see it over and over. I just think it's a hard place to be, and I think it's something they're struggling with.
Yeah, and maybe they don't worry about the expectations put on them, but they certainly worry about what they call their standard, which at a certain point is no longer the standard if you don't play that way for an entire season. But that's what they're striving to be. And Jalen Hurts in the postgame was a very interesting conversation starter because he talked about how manipulative it is to the mind that they can win but not play particularly well. And on the flip side of that, there are games where they can play very well and still lose, and that it's I understand the way that could mess with your mind if you're a player like Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and I think the flip side, if you have a coach who's too tense, that the players are going to sense that, and I mean the way the coach's demeanor and his personality, and I mean that all rubs off on the team.
Yeah. And I think like situationally it has to be different too. Like Nick is who he is. Like you don't want him to
Right.
hold back. But that's a situation where there's 30 seconds left in the game. You got to make sure you get the call right. You got to make sure you have the right personnel in the field.
Yeah.
And getting into it with multiple people on the sideline in a moment like that, even with the timeout there, like it's probably not the right time for it.
Yeah.
And I think I'm guessing here. I think that's probably what he was talking about.
And I think that might have really impacted the way the team was behaving after the game. Maybe Devontae's, outlook at that point, because he was right in the middle of that. I mean, that, he could have been pretty upset about that. It's like, this is not what Super Bowl
I should
teams...
mention, I don't know if I mentioned this on the post-game pod, but Nick Sirianni and Devontae are fine. Like Nick came in it was funny. Nick Sirianni was about to go to the podium to do his press conference, and he's walking through the locker room to go in. Like there's like a little hallway to get to the press conference room, and I'm standing right next to Devontae, trying to wait and see if AJ Brown's going to talk or not. And he walked up to Devontae and congratulated him on hitting 1,000 yards, and he did. Sirianni mentioned it, so I feel okay saying it. He did talk to him about in 2021 where he took him out of that game. He's like, I wish I would have left you in
Yeah.
for that one.
Yeah.
And that's the part that Nick brought up about that sideline spat is that they have. This is where all that work he puts into relationships should pay off. Like you make sure you're close with everyone so that when you yell at someone, it doesn't carry over to the next day.
Right.
And that happens in games. There are a lot of sideline spats that never get seen.
Right. Well, when there's 17 cameras on a game, they pick up everything.
Yeah, but we don't always see them.
Right.
Yeah. So we saw that one.
Yeah.
And it was in a crucial moment.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they all learn from it.
Yeah. Do you think there's a lot to learn from it, or do you think it's just kind of one of those things and you move on?
It's a good question. I do think there is something to learn from it, for everybody involved. I mean, they could have lost that game in that moment.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lesson that these conversations or these moments, there's a time and a place for them, and that's not it.
Mm.
But I think they probably knew that anyway, but it just happened. So I don't think it's a huge concern moving forward. But yeah, it was odd.
It was odd. Winning cures everything. Like you've heard that. And it's true. It's if they win these last two games, none of this is going to matter.
Nope.
Now, maybe they can win them a little more convincingly.
That's going to be interesting this weekend. We'll see.
Yeah, I think they will. We'll get to that Cardinals matchup in a little bit. Matt Patricia. That's his name. We'll call him his name.
I'm a big fan. I'm really impressed with what I've seen.
He's done some good things. And like his defense, now competition's a little different.
Sure.
Certainly, and I think that factors in. For the most part, the defense played pretty well. They had one bust that was bad. You can't give up a long touchdown there. But aside from that, I thought he did a pretty good job. And then he gave some detailed answers in his press conference about some decisions he made.
Yeah, some of them involving personnel, which, you're looking for what's he going to change, what's different, what's his philosophy compared to Sean Desai. And we're starting to see some. I think that first week was probably tough to.
And I think it's tough just because, like, the defense was already doing some things different week to week just based on
True.
matchups. Defense is such a reactionary side of the football that, the offense is dictating a lot of what the defense is doing anyway. So sometimes it's tough to really separate what the play caller is doing differently week to week.
Yeah. But we are seeing more blitzes. Again, that could be a product of who they're playing. Sometimes you just need a change to make a change. I think, they're. And again, like you said, it's different when you're playing Seattle and the Giants and when you're playing Dallas and San Francisco. So you don't know how much of that is the opponent. You're not playing MVP candidates at quarterback the last couple of weeks. I don't think Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito and Tyrod Taylor are going to get a whole lot of MVP votes. Dak and Brock Purdy will. And Josh Allen. So I guess it's too early to kind of make any conclusions, but I feel like he knows what he's doing. I feel like the defense, and I don't think Sean Desai was a disaster. There were some good things. The Miami game, there were some points where I was really impressed with what the product they were putting on the field. The Tampa game, to go down there and hold them to one touchdown. Second half against the Chiefs. Second half in that first Dallas game. There were some. Those are good teams, and especially that Miami game, hold them to 17 points when they were scoring 40 a game at that point. But I like what I've seen the last couple of weeks, and that 25 points the Giants scored. 7 of, I guess 8 of them were on a pick six, and then 7 of them were on a short field, 14 yards, I guess. So I like the direction they're going, and. Playing a lot of young guys. you're out there with Shaq Leonard and Ben Van Sumeren as your starting linebackers. I don't think any of us foresaw that in August when you had N'Kobe and Morrow and Cunningham. So we'll see. Arizona can score some points, but I think they'll shut them down.
Yeah, I'm not very impressed by anything really on
They
that
run the ball well.
Arizona team. I want
They're averaging like 5 yards a carry. That's about it.
Yeah, I wanted to get into a little bit of what Matt Patricia explained
Yeah.
in his press conference, and he was asked about Nolan Smith playing off-ball linebacker, and
Now,
yeah,
how many snaps did he play? Did you look that up?
I
I'm sorry.
didn't.
Sorry to put you on the spot there. I'll look it up while you're talking about Nolan Smith.
Okay. Well, he talked about it, and he mentioned that Nolan had that versatility, and we saw some of that in training camp. He played a little bit of off-ball. I don't think that's ultimately where he's going to play. I think he's definitely limited there, but has that versatility. They can use that here and there, I think, going forward in his career. But really, it was just a product of the bodies and the numbers they had at that position.
Yeah. Yeah. You have them up, and I think that's one thing Patricia was talking about. You know, if you're up, we're going to find something for you to do, a package
Yeah.
or.
I'll be honest, I didn't particularly think it was good.
I know.
And you look at that game and you see, they're in the 5-1-5 and Nolan Smith's the only linebacker on the field. You're going, what the heck is going on here? I don't know if we'll really see that going forward, especially if they get some more health at that position. But like here and there, a snap here and there where you can kind of play around with Nolan and have him drop maybe. Like I think there is some value in that.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, he's got to rush the passer too. They're going to need him next year. But yeah.
Did you look up his?
I can't get on the right page. I'm on the Nolan Smith page, but I can't find the snap count by position. I don't know. It's not coming up, so I'll keep looking.
Okay. He talked about playing Brandon Graham inside
Yeah.
a little bit, which look, we've seen that before. I mean, heck, the biggest Brandon Graham play of his career came from rushing the passer inside
Against Matt Patricia's team.
Again, yeah, so Matt Patricia knows better than anyone.
It's really funny.
Yeah,
I didn't think of that. Snaps by position. All right.
but he hasn't done that a bunch this year. So I thought it was a little interesting that they were doing it with Reddick, who at times has played inside a little bit of like that 4-eye, and Sweat has done it a little bit. But I thought there was more of that in this game, which on one hand is, yes, that gives a different look to the offense. And then you look at Jalen Carter's snap counts from this game and you go, well, why do you only play 21 plays?
Yeah. Just getting back to that, Nolan played 8 snaps at edge and 8 at
That's what happens when you look up a stat.
8 at linebacker. I should have like a theme song for my stats.
Now, you know what that was? So we're on like the work computers for these, and I never come on these, and I have 182 reminders that just popped up.
Mostly from American Airlines.
Yeah. Telling me my flight left 2 years ago from Dallas.
But yeah, 8 snaps on the edge and 8 at linebacker for Nolan.
So his 8 on the edge are pretty typical. He just got some extra burn playing off ball.
Right. BG inside.
Yeah, I looked it up. It's like 11 snaps
Yeah.
came inside.
Yeah.
It's tough because you're looking at the Pro Football Focus snap counts, which are really valuable. At least to tell you like what side of the field they played on. Otherwise, you'd have to go through the L22 and just boop, there he is, boop, there he is.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, about 11. So it was a higher percentage than he played all year
Yeah.
by a significant portion.
Yeah. How do you think he's playing?
BG?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there was going to be some natural regression from last year.
Yeah.
But it's not like it's just him. It's the entire front, which is also something that Patricia was asked about on Wednesday, because this defensive line, I think they're really talented, and this is what this whole thing is built on. And he talked about they're getting pressure, and sometimes the offense dictates not getting to the quarterback. The quarterback's getting the ball out quick. That wasn't the case in this game.
Right.
They didn't get the ball out quick.
Right.
And this is a team that had given up 76 sacks coming into the game.
Third most in history going into the game, and their only sack was from a linebacker. I was just looking at the Eagles have faced the most pass attempts in the NFL this year, and they have, I mean, they're middle of the pack in sacks, but only because they had 24 in their first 7 games. I think they have 16 in their last 8.
Yeah. It's dried up.
And yeah. So if somebody tells you, well, because teams aren't throwing the ball, I mean, they are. Maybe they're throwing it less predictably because last year the Eagles had so many big leads. That could be part of it. You know, I think it seems to me like a lot of, and we could figure that out using the game play index. If what percentage of those 70 sacks last year came when they were up, say, more than 2 possessions or something like that. I bet it was a high number, and they haven't been up more than 2 possessions. Well, they have been, but then they've just given those leads away. I just think a lot of it is obviously. I think I'd rather have Jalen Carter than Hargrave, but Hargrave is a better pass rusher. BG is not what he was last year. Nolan Smith hasn't given them what they hoped for. He has the 1 sack when he was unblocked, I think, on a play early in the year. Reddick has been good, but not quite as good.
Yeah, I think I thought he had a productive game against the Giants.
Yeah.
I don't know why teams continue to block him with their backup tight end.
Yeah, that we've
Stop
seen that,
doing
we've
that.
seen that lead to disastrous results. But yeah, I think there's a bunch of reasons for it, and I think I'm not sure what's happening with Josh Sweat, but that's a big reason. I mean, you expect. I mean, I expected 12 to 15 from him. I think I predicted 17.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about Josh Sweat.
Yeah.
And because, even when Reddick's not getting sacks, he's been very productive. Sweat has not been all that productive recently. And he was, halfway through the season, I think I named him as my defensive MVP when we did our, halfway through awards.
Maybe jinxed him.
I don't think jinxes are real, but he was playing so well, it has just completely dried up for him. And it's a little concerning. He has 3 quarterback hits in the last 5 games.
Yeah.
And the thing that's really concerning is that I'm worried he's just tired. His career high in snaps came in 2021. He played 655. With 2 games to go this year, he's at 771.
Played a lot of snaps.
And this is something we talked about earlier in the year. We were worried about this. Yep. Is this guy going to get worn out? He's never played this much. And I kind of think that might be happening.
Yeah, and I think it might be happening with a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be happening with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and Reddick. I mean, you look at that Buffalo game, and it wasn't just that game, but I mean, those guys.
It kind of makes Fletcher Cox all that more amazing.
Really does.
He's done this for 10 years.
Yeah.
He's played this many snaps.
He's played the most snaps out of the D line, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he might be having the best year. He might be having the best year out of any D lineman
on this team.
Yeah. I mean, you can
the
make
most
a case,
consistent year, at least.
You can make a case for Jalen Carter, but yeah, from week in and week out for 16, 15 games.
Yeah, he's been consistent.
Yeah. I wonder if I'm starting to think he might be back next year if they can make the numbers work.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
He's playing really well. Just really solid, consistent. He's no longer a star player, but he's good.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think Sweat can find it again? If not, that's a problem.
I'm not super confident.
They don't have a ton of depth because Brandon Graham has not been the Brandon Graham of last year. Nolan Smith has not given them what they were hoping. They don't have Derek Barnett anymore, which I know some people are going to roll their eyes, but at least he was a body who could get out there and take some snaps off these other guys. Patrick Johnson plays now.
Yeah, and he's not a great kid, but it's not happening there. It's a problem. And that's why I'm not super confident they can bust out of this sack slump. But I was saying it wasn't just the Buffalo game, and those guys had elevated snap counts for a whole stretch there. Mm-hmm. And they look gassed to me. And maybe that's why Jalen Carter only played, 21 snaps?
Mm-hmm. 21.
Monday. I can't remember anything in life other than snap counts. It's really scary. Where did I park? I don't know. Where's your wallet, Rube? I don't know. Where'd you put your keys? I have no idea. How many snaps did Jalen Carter play against the Giants? 21.
Well, I did just mention it
The number?
30 seconds ago. Yeah.
21? Oh, I wasn't listening. But I might have like subconsciously heard it. But in any case, it's a big concern. Because it's one thing that you just look. There's areas we kind of thought the Eagles would struggle or be challenged this year, but getting to the quarterback was not one of them. At least for me, I didn't think they get 70, but I thought they'd be in the 50s.
Yeah, and it's, for as much talk as we've done about blitzing over the last forever in this city, they haven't needed the blitz because their front gets there.
Yeah,
And it just opens up a world of problems when you really do need the blitz to get after quarterbacks, especially with this secondary being a little shaky. And we know that sacks aren't everything. We know that the defensive line is tied on a string to that secondary too, and you can cover and get sacks that way. But the secondary is not great, so you really need that front to get after it. And
you're right. It's not
they
like
haven't.
quarterbacks are getting rid of the ball super fast.
At times they are. In some games,
I mean, Dak did.
yeah, there are certainly some games where that's the game plan going in. Quarterbacks are just determined to not get beat by these guys.
Yeah.
But there are some other games where, no, it hasn't been like that.
Yeah.
And as much credit as I've given them in some games for closing, it hasn't been as consistent this year, like throughout games.
And especially the last 6 weeks or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 6 to 8 weeks. Yep.
Yeah, we talked about that young secondary a little bit. First, before we get to Sidney Brown, Keely Ringo got to stay in the lineup, right?
He has to, and I don't think he will. I mean,
It's a tricky deal.
It
We've
is.
seen this coaching staff show deference to veteran players.
yes, that's what I'm afraid of. He's just better than James Bradbury.
He's better
right
than
now.
him right now.
And I don't think it's close.
Now, do you worry at all about throwing a young rookie into playoff games?
Well, that's the thing. Like, if
The competition's going to get better. And if Slay's on the other side, they're going to target him.
yeah, it's a concern. But do you want those guys targeting Bradbury or Ringo? So, and I mean, this just happens with cornerbacks. Sometimes they just lose that half a step, and they're not the same player at all.
And I'll tell you what, though, James Bradbury in his career has kind of been like a high variance player.
That's true.
He's been up and down for a lot of it. So part of it could be age. Well, a lot of it's probably age and him being worn down. But if you look back at his history, it's not like it's not a complete shock that he's having a down year.
No, that's true. I know a lot of people are complaining now about the contract. I had no problem with the contract when they did it. He was coming off a really, really good year.
It was one of those things where when they did it, you understood it. But when you took a step back and you went, well, wait a second, you just paid 2 30-plus
Yeah,
corners.
well, he was 29 at the time. I get it. I mean, it's not like he's 34.
No. I know, it's funny that he's going to turn 30, and we're like, oh, he's 29.
But, I mean, it's not. What I'm saying is he's still in his prime. I mean, he was in his prime when they gave him that contract. Maybe not for cornerbacks.
Yeah, I don't think he was.
I mean, he was really good last year. And, I mean, me personally, I didn't have a problem with the contract, but I mean, he's fallen off a cliff. It's not like he's taking a step backwards.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's gone from one of the best corners in the league to one of the worst. To me, you have to play Ringo. And, yeah, it's a concern that he's going to face some really elite quarterbacks, but I think he's more equipped for that right now
or not.
than Bradbury. Well, I mean, it depends how it shakes out, but better quarterbacks than Tommy DeVito or Tyrod Taylor, who he picked off. Youngest Eagle ever with an interception. 4 weeks younger, or 18 days younger than Jim Palmer. But I'm going to not mention what year that was. It's going to give me grief, but he's a really confident kid. He feels like he belongs here. I talked to a bunch of the young corners for a story just about how, like, they've had 8 cornerbacks, 24 or younger, play this year. Tristan McCollum only played special teams, but all the other guys have played. And
Defensive backs or cornerbacks?
defensive backs.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's a lot. It's the second most in the league behind the Bears, but the Bears are a rebuilding team. They're playing young guys. The Eagles are 11-4 and a Super Bowl hopeful team. To play that many young corners and safeties is really unusual. So it's the third most in history that they played. They're all confident. Reed Blankenship made a really interesting comment about that whole group. He said, you see a lot of young players, and he's still a young player too, second year guy. He says a lot of these young players, they come in and they just see the dollar signs. They just want to make as much money as they can. He said these guys love football.
I love that Reed has this knowledge.
I know he's like this. He's like the, he's 25, so he's like but he's a smart guy, and he understands. He said, you see these young guys come in and just all he talk about is the money and the contracts, and he said these guys just sit around and talk football. He says,
Who's Reed talking about?
yeah,
There can't be that many guys that he can be
I
talking
didn't want to
about.
It's
It's a very small group of players who have come in since him.
I mean, I didn't want to I don't think the point was specifically him.
Okay.
It could have even been something he heard from
Sure.
like
yeah.
Roby or Byard or Slay,
Mm-hmm.
he's right next to Slay. So, but his point was that these guys have come in and just really they embrace their role in special teams. All of them start on special teams, and they all are in varying degrees of playing time. And that includes Job and Goodrich. At some point, they all played. Garner, Ricks, obviously, Sidney. It's a lot, and he said they're all very serious minded. They love the game. They want to get better. They're all hard workers, and Keeley was telling me that they're all so close, and they all just want to, even like he said when we were all playing special teams, all we talked about was when we're playing defense, like we're all going to do this, we're going to, there's could be future starters. Who knows about next year, but I could see Sidney starting. I could see, and he's got stuff to work on. I get that. They all do. They're young kids. Sidney Brown's played 12 games in his career. Keeley started 2 games in his career, so they're going to get better. But there's something to work with at least. Finally, you see, and I think Eli Ricks has a chance to be a player as well. So, yeah, it's. I mean, it goes back to the Bradbury question. I feel like Keeley's ready. I don't think he's going to start though. Maybe it's not really something you can mix and match.
Well, they've done it.
They've done it,
and we've even seen it like in recent weeks. On some third downs, they'll have Eli Ricks outside and they'll push Bradbury inside.
Yeah,
I could see them doing a little bit of that. Like maybe Bradbury will still be the starter, but he'll kick inside on some downs when they're in dime.
Possibly. I would just put Keeley out there. And James Bradbury, one thing about him, like he's a class act, and he's always been an accountable guy. I mean, it's just time. I just feel like it's time.
Yeah, man, that contract's gonna be tough to get rid of.
I know.
You talked to Sidney Brown a little bit, and he finally got a penalty, which felt like it was gonna happen at some point, and you just watch him, and he flies around, and it's to the whistle, and then some.
Yeah.
And this was a clear penalty. He got a forearm to the head of a player going down, and it even started a little extracurricular,
Which he didn't mind.
Well, yeah, I don't think he minded it. This is going to be his career, and it's going to be about just harnessing it.
He said, I don't care if I get fined so much, I don't make any money. I'm still going to play this way.
Well, that might start to happen because he's going to get a FedEx this week for that.
From John Runyon, who, played the game the exact same way.
Mm-hmm.
But he said it's something he's got.
John Runyon in that position is like Juan Castillo as a defensive coordinator. Like he knows the other side of it so well that you think it's going to
work. Interesting. Who was his coach, by the way? Mm-hmm. His position coach. He said he understands that refs are going to start looking for him. He understands that he can't hurt his team, but he said, I'm going to play the way I've always played, and I'm not a dirty player. I respect the game. I'm going to play within the rules, but I'm not going to slow down. And Matt Patricia said that it comes from it just comes from reps to really understand how far you can take it. And he is going to get penalties. It was funny because somebody tweeted to me, like, Sidney Brown sucks. All he ever does is get penalties every week. And I said that was the first penalty of his career. And I think it was negated. Well, he negated the hold by the guard. But Sidney actually referred to that when I was talking. He's like, man, some guy tweeted that like I get a penalty every week. He's like, I get one penalty. But I think, he's got a lot to like. There's a lot to like about his game. But he's a young player, and he's new at this, and he's learning the game, and like a lot of these guys. But there's a lot to like.
Yeah, and it's why I was a little frustrated earlier in the year when he wasn't playing,
Sure.
because I think a lot of these moments are teachable, but you could have gotten out of the way instead of playing Terrell Edmonds.
You don't have teachable moments when you're not playing. Terrell Edmonds, was that this year?
That was this year. He was playing. He was starting on this team this year.
Yeah.
Instead of Sidney Brown.
He didn't play at all till week 7. He had the hammy, so he missed a couple games.
Yeah, and that was a bad hamstring injury.
It was. He missed 3 games. But
there were times when he was healthy.
Yeah.
And they were easing him back in.
You made a really good point. Like this coaching staff, and I mean Nick in particular, they like veterans. They just feel more comfortable with veterans out there. I'm glad they're finally letting some of these young kids play in high leverage moments, but sometimes they're a little too slow to do that.
Yeah, and I understand both sides of it, because maybe behind the scenes they're not seeing enough. They want them to have as much information as they can before they feel comfortable putting them out there.
Right.
But on the flip side of that, now you're risking them making mistakes in game, which is going to happen, especially with a player like Sidney who plays with his hair on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna blow some assignments, and we've seen that. And some have gone by a little quietly, but they've been there. And I agree with you, though. He's an exciting young player. I think he will get better, and I think there's a really good chance he's starting next year, or at least playing a big role.
Yeah, and he did talk. I did ask him about the missed tackles in Seattle, and he said it's just it's something he's got to work on. Just learning the angles when the game is faster, and wrapping up. He says just I can tackle. I know I can tackle, and I'll get better at it.
There were strange missed tackles, because I think we've mentioned this, but you think of Sidney Brown and you think, oh man, he must have just ran at somebody and tried to kill them, and they bounced off, and no, he didn't
just
wrap
bad
up.
Technique. Yeah.
Bad angles, bad technique.
Yeah, bad combination. But yeah, they're always gonna, and I do see, like you said, I see the reason you want to kind of take it slow with some young guys. You also don't want to damage their confidence early. Like you don't want to damage their confidence ever, but maybe like in week 10, Keely's more like if you start a young guy or play a young guy a lot of snaps early, maybe he gets beat, can't handle, he's not ready for it. Maybe you just want to make sure they're mentally ready for what they're about to take on. Mm-hmm. So a lot goes into it.
I saw a funny thing in the locker room yesterday. Zach McPherson, who was around.
It was good to see him.
It was good to see him. I've seen him here and there, like outside the building, but he's finally like at the point in his rehab where he's able to do some stuff. So he was in the locker room, and he's coming out of the shower, and he's like trying to get back to his locker, and Slay's holding court, which is right next to him. And I saw the look on his face. I was like, "Welcome back, man. You're back in the mix here." He won't play again until next year, but
right, he won't play until next year. He's doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's encouraged. He'll be out in mini camps if they have any. Reggie was over at his locker.
Reggie is the Golden Doodle?
Yeah.
Golden Doodle?
I think so, yeah.
Who hangs out around he's the team dog.
Yeah. Reggie's pretty cool.
Reggie's awesome.
Yeah.
I tell you, once me and Ashlyn Sullivan were doing a TV hit, and Reggie was outside, and he's like playing with the wires of our mics, and he's like rolling into my leg while I'm doing a hit. And it was really tough to maintain my composure there. I wanted to pet Reggie.
Yeah. Reggie likes Zach McPherson.
Mm-hmm.
Was very attached to him.
He also likes any player in that locker room who has food.
That's true too. And I saw Nakobe yesterday. I hadn't seen him.
Yeah, he came rolling through.
Yeah. He's not playing anytime soon.
No. But some players might be, and
Dave and his segues.
We will
man.
talk about that on the other
That
side.
was good. You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table. Some encouraging signs on the injury report to start this week. Still no Darius Slay. He's probably going to be out this week, but he was talking in the locker room yesterday. He said he's getting bored. He wants to play. They're going to hold him back and make sure he's healthy before he gets back out there. But he will play again.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. Zach Cunningham and Nicholas Morrow both limited in practice. Good sign. They both missed the entire week last week, so they're getting closer. Avonte Maddox, another full participant. He was a full participant all of last week, but they gave him an extra week because he's missed so much time. And Landon Dickerson, with the thumb injury, was a full participant.
That's really good news. Yeah, and they're all good news. It'll be interesting to see how the linebackers, how the reps go, where Shaq fits in.
I still think it's going to be a rotation there.
Yeah.
Between Morrow, Cunningham, and Shaq.
I would think so. I thought Van Sumeren played really well. I don't think he'll be in that rotation.
I thought he had good moments and bad moments.
Yeah, he definitely had some bad moments. But I thought for a kid who had never played a snap on defense.
There are some tools at least.
Yeah. And a possible starter next year. I'll tell you, he's a little small. But he runs around. Man.
With this team, you can never say they'll bring another linebacker. So yeah, I guess there's a chance.
Yeah, there's a chance. I liked it, but I think I thought it was really encouraging the way Shaq played because those first two games were.
Yeah, I think Shaq can get downhill.
Yeah.
In coverage,
I know.
I don't know. Maybe that's still a work in progress with him at this stage of his recovery.
None of them are really excel in coverage.
Yeah, at least he has long arms, so you hope maybe every once in a while he'll throw one of those paws up there. And same with Zach Cunningham.
Cunningham's probably their best cover linebacker, I guess, by default. I don't know.
I guess.
I don't know.
Yeah, probably.
But
Nick Morrow tried to play in that game. Watching him pregame, he couldn't do it.
Yeah, you were saying he came out and you could see him wincing, I guess. They could use all the help they can get, certainly by the postseason. Just getting Avonte back. I don't know.
Huge.
Yeah.
And being in the locker room yesterday, you could tell how excited his teammates are.
Yeah.
About getting him back. He's a big piece to this.
He's a big piece, and he's a guy that we weren't sure. That's a serious injury, and he had foot surgery, or was it foot surgery after the season? Toe surgery.
Yeah.
Well, toe's on your foot, so it was technically foot surgery, right?
Yeah.
A toe is part of your foot.
Yeah, that Landon Dickerson arm surgery because his thumb is attached.
So it'll be interesting to see how he's used. I don't think he's going to be ready for any kind of full load of reps if he plays Sunday.
They rotate there anyway.
But, if he's 100%, I'm not sure you're rotating.
Yeah, that's why it's such a big deal to get him back this week because he gets 2 games to ramp up before the playoffs.
Yeah.
When they can kind of unleash him.
And you hope he's 100%.
Yeah. And in a way, he gets hurt so much that, not saying it was good that he got hurt, but good he got hurt when he did, in a way.
That's true.
It happens later. He's out for the year.
Yeah.
Now you get him back for the playoffs because he is an effective player.
Yeah.
He really is. Even last year when he's playing through an injury that he was not 100%.
No.
He was still helping them.
He had 3 injuries last year.
He did.
He just hasn't played much football. He's played 15 games in the last 3 years.
It's been tough. He said this one was really tough because it was
2 years, yeah.
The toe surgery was the first surgery he's had. So to have 2 in, 8 months is a lot.
Yeah. Good guy. Everyone's happy to see him back. And
I think he's going to really help them.
Yeah.
They need playmakers on that back end. They haven't gotten it from Byard the way they hoped.
Right.
I think Blankenship is just he's solid. He's limited.
Right.
He's a limited player. Slay is a playmaker, but no one's going to throw his way when you got Bradbury on the other side. Bradbury hasn't been a playmaker. You need someone to make some plays back there.
Right. And he'll do it if he's ambulatory. He'll do it.
In the words of Jalen Hurts, I don't have my dictionary with me today.
It's kind of like a commitment.
Yeah, good signs there though.
Yeah.
What's the biggest one? Avante? I think it's Avante.
Yeah. 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 They really need him. He probably won't play a full workload until the postseason, I would think.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. But you ramp him up this week.
Maybe 10 snaps.
You get him a little bit this week. You ramp up next
He
week.
hasn't played in 3 months.
It's a lot.
Yeah. So you get him 10 to 12.
The good news
snaps.
is it was an upper body injury, so he was able to do cardio. Now I know it's a lot different,
But not able to lift.
Yeah, which is significant. But I think if you had to choose one or the other, you want him to be able to be in good physical condition.
And he kind of indicated that's really the next step for him is he's trying to get his win back and be able to handle going out and playing an NFL game against fast guys. So, I mean, he's healthy. It's just a matter of conditioning now.
Oh, I meant to mention this earlier in the podcast. I talked to Reed Blankenship about being the defensive on-field play caller. First time he's ever done that in the NFL.
Really?
And it's rare. Like, it's normally a linebacker.
Just because of the distance between.
And that's what he said was the toughest part. It's like a linebacker gets the play call in, has to move like 2 yards.
Yeah.
Reed's getting the play call in. He's got to backpedal like 15 yards sometimes, and then look at the offense and maybe move again.
Right.
So it was funny. He said early in the game he was starting to bail too quick, and Fletcher Cox on the sideline. By the way, Fletcher, good leader. Super impressed by the way he's grown into this leadership role over the last 5 years or so. Pulled him aside and said, "Hey, you're doing a good job. You've got time. Don't bail so quick. We need to get these play calls in."
Yeah, and that's something you don't really think about.
Mm-hmm.
Never. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, and again, Reed's a young player.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he started 4 games last year. He started 13. He started 17 games in his career.
Now they'll have Nick Morrow back most likely for this game.
I would think.
It'll probably go back to him. But if they're going to be rotating an awful lot at linebacker, is it crazy to just give it to Reed?
I mean, ideally, you want a guy who's on the field every snap.
Yeah, you don't want it to
There's
change.
not a lot of those.
You can have multiple guys. Like, you can rotate it, but it's tricky.
Yeah.
He did tell me that he wears it at practice every day.
Really?
Reed.
That's interesting.
For a situation like this. So he's done something for a year and a half that never came up. But when it did, he had been used to hearing the calls. And
Good for him. Matt Patricia was really good talking about that and the challenges of having a safety with the green dot. I would suggest to any Eagles fan, if you haven't seen Matt Patricia's presser from Wednesday, watch the video. Really impressive stuff on a lot of topics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really thoughtful.
I don't know why, but I love the green dot on defense. Always fascinates me. I talked to N'Kobe about it in depth this summer, and N'Kobe actually said he would, during his workouts, practice getting play calls out because he realized that in a game he'll be winded, and you have to have enough wind to get the call out and be loud enough, especially in a loud environment like the Link was on Monday night to get it out.
Yeah, it's definitely a skill that we don't really think about too often.
Mm-hmm. It's important.
It is.
Yeah. All right. Cardinals, bad team.
That's enough about them.
Look, I think there are certain players on that squad that worry a little bit. Kyler Murray is certainly one of them. His ability to get away from pass rush, to run like a little kid. He runs like a little kid. You ever notice that?
No.
Yeah, he runs funny, but he's fast. And the one thing Matt Patricia said about him is that what really stands out is how quick he goes, like 0 to 100. He doesn't take ramp up time to get to his max speed.
Yeah.
He just goes. He's like an electric
60.
car. Yeah.
They have a couple good players.
Trey McBride, good tight end. James Conner, good running back.
They run the ball well.
Yeah, they don't have a bunch at the receiver position. Hollywood Brown is there. He's solid.
Zach Ertz is gone. Never signed anywhere, did he?
He never did. What do you make of that?
Maybe he's just not that good anymore. I mean, I didn't see any Arizona games. I mean, we started to see him decline. How old is Zach? 32?
I mean, he can still play.
I would think so. 30, just turned 33 in November. I would think he'd be able to help the team, but maybe not. He had 27 for 187 in 7 games, but he was playing with Kyler wasn't playing at that point.
And Trey McBride is really good. He took that job. He has 72 catches, 743 yards, and 2 touchdowns this year.
Yeah,
he's their leading receiver.
Yeah. Jalen Thompson's pretty good safety.
Yeah, on defense they have some players. Buda Baker's still there. He's a really good player. You got to know kind of where he is at all times. Kaiser White has missed a few games, but he's been good for them when he's been on the field.
Yeah. Gannon brought him, and
he's been out. Is he out for the year?
I don't know that. Arizona's 3-12. Their wins have been over that early win over Dallas. They beat the Falcons at home, and they beat the Steelers.
No, he's on IR. Yeah,
they beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh a couple weeks ago. That's a good win. Might have been. Was that Kyler's first game back?
They're not very good.
They just lost to the Bears 27-16. No, they're not very good. I'm trying to.
Gannon's defense has not been very good.
Yeah.
Nick Rollis is there as the DC.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole idea was to not be very good, but
probably
I don't know if they wanted to be this bad. But look, it's a game.
They've like early in the season, I was impressed by how competitive they were.
Yeah, well, their first 3 games they lost by 4 in Washington, they lost by 3 to the Giants, and then they beat the Cowboys, and then kind of
it's been bad.
Just got crushed every week after that. But with the Eagles, again, I don't think it's about the Cards. It's about the Eagles. And if they keep making mistakes like they have all year, they have 18 turnovers in their last 10 games. That's really hard to do. They could lose this game. If they turn the ball over 3 times and fumbles lead to touchdowns, and if they don't play smart, penalties, turnovers, they'll lose this game. But
so you're picking the Cardinals this week?
I'm not, but I'm just saying, if it's to me, it's about the Eagles. It's not about Arizona. And I said that before the Giants game, and look what happened. The Giants stink. The Eagles should have blown them out, but I don't have a lot of faith in the Eagles putting together a 60-minute game on both sides because they haven't done it all year.
That's fair. Yeah. What do you make of the Gannon angle?
I don't know. I don't think that stuff really. It's good for the media.
That's us.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I don't know.
Okay. Think he gets booed?
I mean, usually when the coach runs out, there's not a lot of people in there yet.
That's true.
I mean, he'll run out there really early, so I don't know. But I'm sure whoever's there is going to boo him because who wants the number 2 defense in the NFL going to the Super Bowl?
Well, things didn't end well.
Did not end well. But
I think that's an understatement.
He was a good coach here for.
Apparently, him and Nick
19 and
are in good terms. And as much as fans don't like him, talking to players like they really like Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah,
they still do.
Yeah,
there's not like I know some people are like, oh, they want to get back at Gannon. I don't really sense that. No. I think the players still kind of like him.
Yeah,
they enjoyed their time with him.
I would agree.
Yeah,
that's what I've gathered.
Yeah, Eagles are 10.5-point favorites. Do they win? Do they cover?
I'm going to say they don't cover. I mean,
I think they win and they cover.
Do you? I think I picked them to beat the Giants by 4, and everyone's laughing at me. They won by 1 possession, but I'm going to pick another close game just because until the Eagles have a convincing win against anyone, I don't think. I think
that's fair. Yeah, but I also think this Cardinals
might even pick overtime.
Very bad.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
Okay, the last thing we want to get to before we wrap this up. Good news: Eric Allen, for the first time, is a Hall of Fame finalist.
In his 18th year of eligibility, in his 4th year as a semifinalist, which is 25 guys, he's now one of 15 finalists.
Let me do it this way, Rube.
Yeah.
Let's transport ourselves to the meeting. There's a case to be made for every player that's of those 15 who are eligible,
Mm-hmm.
I would like you to make the case for Eric Allen to be in the Hall of Fame. And I'm trying to draw this out so you have enough time to get up your story with all the stats
I've done that.
that will tell you.
Well,
Okay,
I
make
mean,
your case.
and full disclosure, I wrote up a thing on behalf of Eric that was distributed to all the voters. Um, I covered Eric Allen. He's probably my favorite player I ever covered. I used to watch film with Eric Allen and Seth Joyner at the vet. I can't even go to the bathroom in the NovaCare complex now, but I used to watch film in the basement there. Um, he's the smartest player I've ever been around. I never seen anybody prepare like him. He knew exactly what opposing offenses were doing. He played, they played some great quarterbacks back then. But here, to me, here's the operative stat. There are 23 cornerbacks in the Hall of Fame and 45 defensive backs. Only 4 of them had 58 career interceptions and 9 career pick sixes, which is what Eric had. I mean, his numbers stack up against every cornerback that played the game. Out of those 4 guys who had 58 career interceptions and 9 pick sixes that are in the Hall of Fame, only 2 did it as full-time cornerbacks, Aeneas Williams and Deion Sanders. The other 2 were Charles Woodson and Rod Woodson, who became safeties kind of late in their career, but only reached those benchmarks as safeties. So Eric Allen has more interceptions and return touchdowns than 41 of 45 Hall of Fame defensive backs and 21 of 23 Hall of Fame cornerbacks. So, I mean, the production's there. People always ask me, why hasn't he gotten in yet? I think a lot of it is he was on a defense with Reggie White, and people just think Reggie was that defense. And they dismiss Clyde Simmons and Seth Joyner and Wes Hopkins and Byron Evans and Andre Waters and Jerome Brown and everybody else who was on that defense. They think it was just Reggie, and it wasn't. Eric Allen, I mean, he went to the Raiders and Saints and had a ton of interceptions. He had a pick in his first game down in Tampa against Vinny Testaverde. And I was at that game. I did cover that. It was opening day, 1988. But the numbers are there. And he was also, and you can't quantify it, but I mean, he was a really willing, if people watched him, really willing run supporter, very tough player, good tackler, great tackler, all-around player. He's one of the best cornerbacks I've ever seen. He's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, well, he should be.
It's going to be tough. I mean,
You look at this class.
Yeah.
You and I were talking about it last night. I think there are a few locks. Like I think Julius Peppers is a lock. I think Antonio Gates is a lock.
yeah. I wonder if the receivers, and they're all deserving. Reggie Wayne, Torrey Holt, and who's the other one?
Andre Johnson.
Andre Johnson, not Chris Johnson. They might split the receiver vote. There's no other cornerback.
I think one of the receivers is getting in this year. It'll
If
probably
you
be
had to
Reggie
vote for
Wayne.
one of those 3.
I'm biased.
Yeah.
I think Andre's the best player of those 3. He played with awful quarterbacks.
He did.
Like if you put him with Peyton Manning, the numbers he would have put up would have been absurd.
Torrey Holt had Warner
Yeah.
for a lot of his years.
And
But
the best quarterback Andre Johnson played with was Matt Schaub.
Shabby. That's fair. If Gates and Peppers and one receiver get in, let's say just one receiver, that leaves 2 spots.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be 5, but the 5 is the max.
Yeah,
And they need 80% of the vote.
exactly. And you only get 20 years after you're first eligible. So
Jared Allen might make it this year.
he could make it. So I think, and by the way, Jari Evans from Philly is also a finalist.
Yeah.
Frankfurt High School. So real good guy. So he was at I guess it was at Lehigh, so it had to be a while ago. But I met him up there at training camp. It's going to be hard, and Darren Woodson. There's going to be a lot of push for him. He played on 3 Super Bowl teams, championship teams. Maybe Eric Allen's lack of a ring hurts him.
You have Patrick Willis this year, which is a great case study for longevity versus peak.
True.
It's kind of the same thing with Dwight Freeney.
He only played, 8 years? Willis?
2007 to 14.
8 years.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be easy. And after this, he has 2 more years, and then he goes over to the senior committee. Then then you're going up against guys that played in the 20s and 30s. And stop it.
I didn't even give you a look that time.
He did. But to me, he's as deserving as anyone. It's an interesting class because, I mean, and Devin Hester, I mean, the guy redefined what it means to be a returner. I mean, there's just some really, really elite players. Willie Anderson was probably the best offensive tackle of his period. Won't be easy, but he's got a shot.
Yeah, it's nice to see him gaining some steam, though.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, and Doc wasn't even, like, there was a school of thought that Doc wouldn't get in.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Hall of Famer. It's been a good stretch. Tommy McDonald got in, Harold got in, Doc got in. So,
Yeah, hopefully EA will be the next Eagle.
I'd like to see it.
All right. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, click that like button, subscribe there as well. That's it. We'll talk to you guys after the game. A beautiful 1:00 game, by the way,
Finally.
on Sunday. Enjoy that. We'll be able to do a podcast early.
Well, it's light.
We'll be able to listen to it that same day. Oh, what a treat. All right. Take care, everyone. For Reuben, I'm Dave. We'll talk to you soon.